Hey, dear ones, Karen here from KarenMurphyCoaching.com. And it's been a little bit of time since I've popped into a video for you. So today is the day. I'm back. I'm here. So I wanted to share my experience of the last week because I just sent my oldest kid to college yesterday, dropped him off at his school. So it's been a big week of assisting him to get prepared and packed, and then off yesterday. It's not his official start. This is like a pre-program. He's there for a few days, getting together with a small group of students, having adventures around the town and the area. And then next week, there's going to be a opening where it's sort of the official beginning, and families are invited to join. So his brother and I and his grandparents are all going to go for the first day or two next week. So it's not like the big last hug goodbye, but it is the official like moving out and moving him into his new space. So it felt pretty big all week. I'd known, of course, that this was coming all summer, as said he. And so I'd intentionally allowed myself to feel everything that I was feeling at different points in the summer and release any cluttered emotion along the way. So there were lots of little touch points in the summer for me of just releasing a pressure valve here and over here, and just letting the waves of emotion come whenever they came. Sometimes I was driving and it would rise up in the car and I would just like feel this wash of emotion that would come up in tears and let that flow. Sometimes it was on the dance floor in my meditation, movement meditation. Oftentimes I got to those pockets in there. Sometimes it was in conversation with him or with his brother, and I would get this mothering thing, and I would feel that trigger and just allow myself to feel it and breathe through it. And all of that really assisted me to be so present with him the last few days as he was getting ready. And a lot of stuff was coming up for him. Just like excitement, nervousness, stress, all the normal things that you would expect. And I'm using this story of my oldest going to college as a metaphor because this is true for all our kids with every new thing that's coming up. And every new season, as we are coming to the end of summer and beginning a new autumn, that's a big time of transition for a lot of families, right? And so this is probably potentially coming up for you with your kids too, as things shift and change each year. So as he was coming up to this, deadline date of being all ready to move out and start something fresh and new, he was having his emotional experience with it. And this was the big reminder. This is the big message of this video, is that to honor our kids' experience. It was his experience, this whole preparation of moving out and beginning anew. It's his experience. It's not my experience. It's all his. This was true when he started preschool. That was his experience. Started kindergarten. That was his experience. When we pulled back from public school and he homeschooled, that was his experience, right? So this is a good reminder for all of us parents. Our kids are having these experiences and it's all theirs. And yes, we get to be right alongside them and support them and hold space for them, but it's not our experience. So it's not beneficial for us to entangle ourselves into it with them, right? So this came up for me because I watched him start to pack, and he had some things he needed to complete, all those thank you cards, goodbyes to his friends, and I had a lot of ideas and my own experience and expanded awareness as his parent of, how we could do this really efficiently, how we could do this really well, get everything checked off on his checklist, get all those cards out of the way so that it wasn't, cluttering his to-do list. I had a lot of ideas about that. There were times when I suggested an idea, but I knew, and I reminded myself along the way, and sometimes he had to remind me, that this was his experience. And so my attempts to want to control or entangle or make it what I thought it should be were counterproductive to his experience. And so, there were times where I was like, can I support you with this? Da, da, da. And he would say, sure, yeah, thanks. Or he would say, no, thank you. Like the morning we're actually leaving. And I thought it would be a good idea to have most of the car packed the night before. And, you know, he'd be putting his thank you cards in the mailbox because he did wait until the last minute. You know, those sorts of things. I thought that would be really efficient. That would make things, you know, really make sure that you got everything you wanted, kiddo. You know, like, let's check the checklist. So do you want me to, so I asked him in the morning of, so should I pull up that checklist that you have of things to bring to college? And I'll just read it off and you can just, you know that you got it or you need to grab it. He said, no, thanks. I don't want that. I don't need it. I was like, okay, fine. Good. You know what you want. And that's really what we want, right? We want our kids to know, to take charge of their own experience, to be able to say, yes, this is the experience I'm having, and thanks, Mom, but no thanks, Mom. Or thanks, Mom, yeah, I could really use that support. Know themselves, right? All of these are opportunities for them to know themselves. Now, an 18-year-old is going to have a lot more of his own ideas, his own opinions, his own perspective informing that process than a 3-year-old, you know, going to a new play group, right? Or even a 5-year-old or 6, 7-year-old going to whatever new learning environment they're going to go to. So it's going to look different for, you know, I'm not going to ask the same questions of our little younger kids that I am an older child, right? But you as a parent, you know your child, you're reading your child, you know the best ways to support them and still honor their experience for them. So for a younger child, I would be, you know, checking in on getting an emotional read on how they're feeling, because that's where it's really going to bubble up for them, is in their emotions. And so we check in and we pause, you know, how's it, you know, we're going to start this new thing tomorrow. How do you feel? And I would remind them to check in with their body, with their feelings all the time, so that they could be present with it. And for a lot of kids, when they start something new and it's taking them outside of maybe the home space, maybe even away from a parent for a little bit of time, a lot of emotions can come up. And so you want to allow a lot of space for those emotions to really flow freely prior to the having of the experience, because that will reduce a lot of emotional clutter for them, allow them to be much more present. It's truly no different if they're 18 or if they're 4, but the technique is going to look a little different, right? And so I asked my 18-year-old, how are you feeling? Now, I know him really well, and I could read when it was appropriate time to ask him that question and when it wasn't. Because if he's in his zone and he's really focused, that's not my time to pop in with my mom question, right? But if he's paused, if he's kind of slumped on the couch, maybe I've heard a big sigh come from him, or maybe he's looking for me. I see him seeking to make eye contact with me as we pass in the kitchen. Maybe that's a pause point, and I can say, hey, how you feeling about all this? Yeah. What's coming up? How's it feeling today? You know, so, and that's just really inviting them to pause and check in with their presence, their experience of this moment. You know, in this moment of all that's shifting, to check in and to be present with it. And that is really the true value of honoring our kids' experience. Because that's, you know, the experience, if I had set the agenda for the whole week and he had followed it, you know, step 1, 2, 3, and 4, yeah, he would have gotten all of his thank you cards out. He would have had his checklist all checked off and had all of his boxes packed the night before. He would have not forgotten too much, you know, he probably would have remembered most everything. None of that happened. And that's fine, because really, if he had been following my own agenda, he wouldn't have had his own experience of it. And he probably would have felt more stress, because this is the kind of kid he is. When he's pushed to someone else's agenda that's not his own, he experiences stress. And that is counterproductive to him having his own experience. And it's also doesn't allow for what he can learn about himself in the process of his own experience, right? And that's what I truly want. Like, yeah, it's nice when he gets everything he needs all there. And all those thank you cards are taken care of. And, that feels kind of culturally good for me. My child has fulfilled the thank you card agenda, the bigger culture places on us. And all those people can feel his gratitude. Like I really, I value that. And I know he values that. But even more significant than all of that is that he have an experience that draws him closer to his own self-knowing, right? His own inner exploration of himself. And, so here's what really happened is that we got off, half hour later than we expected because he did a lot of packing in the morning. He's pretty much a minimalist, so he didn't pack a lot. But when we got to the college and we unpacked all his stuff, and then we went and grabbed some lunch, a big chunk of lunch was him thinking of all the things that he had forgotten and creating a little list of those things. And it all was fine because we both knew that we were going to see each other next week and that I would have a chance to pick up some more things if he did forget at home. And no, those thank you cards are not in the mailbox. Apologies to those people who are on that list. I know that you love him and that he loves you and he feels gratitude. And he's going to figure out his way of how he's going to complete that, expression back to you. And I honor and trust his process that it's going to be more valuable for him and thus more valuable for you when he does it in his way. It's just not going to happen today. Or maybe it's happening right now. What do I know? He's in his experience right now, right? And so he's free of any entanglement for me on that agenda, which is good. So every time our kid is starting something fresh and new, or even just a brand new day, right? And they are in an experience. We're always in our experience moment to moment, and we're always invited to be fully present in our experience. And when we are jumping into our children's experience, wanting to make it something that we want to have happen for them, then that's called entanglement. We're entangling our energy into their energetics, and we're being counterproductive to them having the experience that they are here to have, whether it's an engagement with a sibling or a play date or a camp or a learning situation, learning, some sort of school or learning environment engagement. Doesn't mean that we can't help them orient and receive, assist them to find their guidance. And, of course, the younger they are, the more we're going to be alongside them, assisting them to orient. But as they grow, that inner guidance, we want to support them to tune into their own inner guidance more and more to be the compass, of their experience, of their life, of what they create. So this is counter to the part of our old job description as parents. Old job description says, we need to assist our kids to jump through all these hoops. And when they jump through all these hoops and make a straight beeline towards, all the things that our culture says makes for a successful kid, makes for a successful adult on the other end of this childhood, makes for that, successful career choice, family life, that's our job. We're supposed to help them move in that straight line to that end goal of, healthy, successful, happy life. And there's a lot of boxes, there's a lot of track. There's a lot of there's a steady track that that culturally we've laid down for kids to move through, right? So if any of you have guided your kids through high school, through all, public school and all the way through high school, even private school, are really tied to tracks a lot of times. And those tracks are guiding them to college, and that college is maybe guiding them to grad school. And maybe that's guiding them into this amazing career. And then, and then what, right? Because we want kids to be successful. We want them to be happy. And that's been in the past how to do that. But we're in a new era. We're shifting paradigms. And I want to just reiterate that a lot of today's kids are all about busting that illusion that if they move through this steady track, they will find happiness and joy at the other end and success. That actually is an illusion. And there's a lot of people who have been through that whole, track to find out at the end that it had no meaning. What they landed in had no meaning for them because they had lost sight of themselves along the way. So a lot of us are aware of this. We know this. We've been through our own tracks and busted through it, and discovered ourselves so much deeper with the busting through, right? So there's no need to hold on to those hoops for our kids if it's not what they want. And sometimes what they want has been, it's because they've been conditioned. And so assisting our kids to break through any conditioning that draws them away from their true knowing, this is what we're getting back to, is right, that true inner guidance is what is to be the compass for them, not any cultural conditioning. And sometimes it might align with the cultural conditioning. Sometimes, some of those hoops are of service to what they truly want to experience in life. And that's perfectly fine. And they get to choose that. So how empowering it is to choose what they're going to jump through and what they're not. It's the non-choosing that gets in the way of the inner knowing. And so, again, like a lot of the kids today, in this era particularly, are here to bust a lot of those hoops and bust that track out and bust out of the boxes. They're here for not that easy, straight path. They're here for adventure, for deeper exploration, for knowing themselves on multi-dimensional layers much earlier than many of us have experienced, because the world is shifting and it's different and the energy is different. And they're here for this time. And so that is a recommendation for us parents to unhook ourselves from any of that old job description, any of those hoops that we are tied to our kids experiencing, because maybe we are tied to wanting them to have this really stable, successful, happy life. But, that again, that's an end. The ends to the means track is illusionary. And supporting our kids to be connected to their own inner guidance, to know for themselves whatever hoop they want to create for themselves, whatever track, they're going to go off track. They're going to create their own track. So what's going to support them in that the most is to know themselves every step of the way more and more. And so we get to hold that ecosystem vision of them that really honors the whole of them, so that they can emerge into their own knowing of them as they grow, as they experience, as they're present to their experience, whatever it is. So there was a moment when I checked in with my son a few days ago, and he said, I said, how are you feeling? What's up right now? And he said, I feel stressed out. What if I, screw this up? And when you ask your kid that question, what are you feeling? There's lots of responses you can have to whatever shows up. And mostly the most useful response is just to listen to that. And so I know that the majority of the assistance I gave to him in that moment was allowing him the space to just say that out loud. What if I screw this up? And just be in the feeling of like, what if I screw this up? Just breathe that. And sometimes even the saying it out loud diffuses it, right? Because he could hear himself say that, and I'm sure a certain part of him was like, well, that's ridiculous. And then another part of him was like, oh my God, what if I screwed? Like, he's very serious with it. And so sometimes, though, it's helpful to bring a response. And that's what I felt in that moment. And so I said, you know what? There's no way you can do this wrong. And I truly believe that. There's no way you can do this wrong, because when you hold an ecosystem vision, you pull yourself out of that dualistic perspective of right and wrong, right? It becomes this wholeness instead. And everything that can happen in that experience is fuel to glean, to harvest, to cleanse, to purge, to warm you, to fuel you for the next iteration, right? And so, if you fail a class and you are present into that experience, think about how much you would learn about yourself. And how much you would be able to release yourself from the cultural conditioning that says, if I fail a class, I'm a failed person. That's an illusion, right? And so it's an opportunity to ditch that story and get clear on like, oh, if I fail a class, that's just one layer of this experience. And I get to be present to how that feels and how untrue that actually is, that I'm a failure because I fail a class. Actually, that's the farthest thing from the truth. Maybe, and it, it prepares you for that next class or that next experience or that next knowing of yourself, that next connection deeper with your professor or with the material or with whatever it was that led you into that experience of the failure of the class. Now, I'm using that as a metaphor. I actually can't imagine that he would fail a class, just knowing the kind of kid he is. Another kid actually will probably experience failure of a class because there is something there for them to glean. I think he's going to glean other things because he's that kid who's going to, forget to eat and his body's going to give him that feedback. Or maybe he's the kid who's going to stay up all night one night and his body's going to give him the feedback the next day. Think of all the things you learned in college by doing something so-called wrong, and how you harvested that and what you gained from that experience. Now, what's going to help any child who's done something wrong or, maybe stepped out of the culture and condition of what was right, is that inner guidance to pull them back into their own alignment, to glean those lessons and allow it to inform them deeper for their own guidance development. It's that inner GPS development. And I don't know what experiences are going to support him to develop his inner guidance system, but I'm sure he's going to have them. And I'm sure some of them are not going to be as comfortable as other ones. And that's right. That's life. That's what we're all here for. All of our kids are going to have that experience at times where it's not going to feel comfortable. They're going to have conflicts with their friends. They're going to have miscommunications. They're going to have, they're going to mess up on a test or a paper or some sort of, external evaluative thing. They're going to miss a class. They're going to miss a meal. They're going to not sleep good. They're going to have all these things that are going to be, course correction opportunities, essentially. And again, for each one of these, they're going to gain so much more out of the experience if they can glean it and use it to inner guide, to clear the clutter from their inner guidance. There's no way we can do this wrong. Now, as a parent, if we're being fully present to our experience as space holders, that's our job. That's the new job description, right? We're here to orient, assist with guidance, especially the younger they are, and be present to our own experience so we can hold space for their experience without getting emotionally or energetically entangled into it. All right, I think that's all I've got for you. I have one more little piece, because when at any time there's a shift for a child, there's a shift for the whole family, right? We are all interconnected like a web. So when one is having their own experience, over here, the rest of us have an opportunity for our own experience, our own shift. And so that's true for me and my youngest son. Big brother's gone to college. He and I are going to start a whole new fresh engagement with what it is to be in family this way. And yeah, there's some new things coming up for us this fall I'm really excited about for both of us. And so that, as a parent, that is always our opportunity too, is to be present with our own experience of our own next layer of adventure, learning, growth, development. There's always something new for us as well. And as we are present to our own experience, tuning into our inner guidance every step of the way, we're modeling that for our kids. We are taking charge of our own energetics, and that's also keeping us from entangling in each other's, and allowing us to be present for each of, we don't have the easy job. We're holding space for theirs, and we're being present to our own. That takes quite a lot, actually, of emotional intelligence, of energetic awareness, and a lot of that awareness cycle processing sometimes. So I just want to honor that for you and acknowledge that big work for you. This job description isn't necessarily any easier. It does let us off the hook of a lot of that cultural stuff, but it does also call us to our own experience, to our own presence a lot. So much love to you as you step into that deeper and deeper, and much love to your kids and your whole family as you go through any shifts that are coming up. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this amazing life, right? This amazing life. All right. Much love. Have a great day.